Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to Voting 101 Insight into the Polls. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Sarah Hamilton, and I am the Community Engagement Manager with Alliance for a Better Minnesota. Hope everyone is having a fabulous Monday night. I know things are a little wacky out there at the polls right now. Lines are long, but you know what? Stay in those lines and make sure that your voice is heard. So this evening, we have two very, very special guests for our episode 2 of Voting 101. We have our first guest. His name is David Pryor. He is a former elections judge, and he is also a Minneapolis resident. So we're super excited to have him. And we also have Rahma. And Rahma, she is a student poll worker, and I'm so excited to have her. She's actually 17 years old, you all. So that is amazing. The youth are in full force. So shout out to you all. Welcome to Voting 101, episode 2, you all.
Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yay. Great. Like I stated, we are very excited to have you here. Not only because you are very kind and wonderful people, because you agreed to do this live with me, but also because of the great work that you do in community. And I know, Rahma, you just had an article written about you and the great work that you're doing at the polls as a 17-year-old poll worker. And you're managing at the polls, if I'm not mistaken. That's what I read, and I'm like, wow, that's so cool. So, and then also, of course, David, you have a long list of accolades that I'm not even going to touch on, but we're going to specifically talk about your training and your understanding of what's happening kind of at the polls. So we are going to, just before we jump into the questions, we're not going to be before everyone too long, but we hope that this is a very educational conversation for you all, because we want to understand what happens after we cast a ballot, rather that's absentee or rather that's in-person voting. What happens to our ballot after that? Of course, it's counted, but how is it counted? We want everyone to feel at ease as we're going into election day for those that have voted early, which of course Minnesota has been at the top of the list when it comes to voter turnout. So applause to Minnesotans everywhere. Thank you for continuing to lead by example. And this year is no different. We have been breaking records since early voting has begun. So let's start off. I'm going to start with you, Rahma, and just share with our audience a little bit about you and how you got engaged in working at the polls.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Rahma. I'm a student at South High School. And I first learned about being a student election judge through my high school, through some announcements they do at the beginning of the school day. And I was like, this is a really cool opportunity. I'm not able to vote yet, but this seems like a cool chance to see how elections work. So I was really eager to learn more about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. What about you, David? I know you've been doing this work for quite some time, but what made you say, you know what, I want to assist like right at the polls, be right with people in the role of an elections judge?
Well, I've been a journalist in town for longer than both of you have been alive. And I finally retired a few years ago, and that sort of freed me up to do other things. I always covered city politics, so I think I started being an election judge during a city election year, which is an odd numbered year. And, you know, once you've done it, it kind of gets in your blood. It's fun. It helps people vote. You get to learn about the system in a different way. And so it's, you know, it's one of those things that just becomes addictive in a good way.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I get that. I tell you, if someone would have told me 5 years ago that I would have been in politics, I would have told them you're crazy. But nevertheless, or even, you know, as civically engaged as I am. So thank you both for your work. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into our first question. All right, so walk us through the process. I'll start with you, Rahma. Walk us through the process. So when someone comes into a polling location, they're coming to cast their ballot. Walk us through the process of that. They come, and then what happens?
Okay. So as soon as you walk into polls, you're going to see a greeter. Someone's going to greet you, welcome you into the polls. And then after that, you head to the poll book registration specialist. and that's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be the person who's registering people if you're not registered to vote. And yeah, in Minnesota, if you're not registered to vote, you just need a few documents and you can register the same day, which is fantastic. So if you're registered, we just get you checked in and we get you to sign a little voter acknowledgement. And after you get that, we give you a little sticker. I call it a sticker. I think there's more of an official name for it, like the ballot thing. And you take it to the people who are handing out the ballots. And once you hand them that, they hand you your ballot and you can vote for whoever you like. And then you take it to the tabulator. After you take it to the tabulator, that counts your vote and it's secured.
Awesome. So the tabulator is just a machine that calculates the votes.
Yes.
Gotcha. And so then after the votes are calculated, what happens then, David?
Well, so after you leave the polling place and after the last person is voted, basically the judges at the precincts where you vote spend a whole lot of time making sure that the receipt that you were given to get the ballot matches the number of ballots that were counted. I have been involved where like we've been one ballot off and people will stay, judges will stay forever to find that ballot. We really will. It doesn't happen very often, but so we'll make sure that the ballots are all counted and that we have an equal number of receipts. Then we'll run the tape in the tabulator that Rahma was telling you about. And this is something that the head judge and a judge of another party. In Minnesota, there are 4 major parties, Democrats, Republicans, and 2 of the legal marijuana parties. Judges, you have to make sure that you have 2 judges and they're not both of the same party. So they check the tape. They make sure the tape is okay. Now, in Minneapolis, our system is connected to wirelessly to downtown. And basically all the numbers flow through an encrypted system. It's super safe to the downtown city elections office. I guess it's not downtown anymore. It's on East Hennepin. But so what you're likely to see on election night is those tabulations flowing very quickly to the city. Now, again, if there's precincts that have trouble parring up the votes and the receipts, they may be delayed. But in my experience, since when I started, we were driving the ballots down. Now we've got this Wi-Fi connection and it happens pretty much right away. So if you're online and you're looking for your precinct and you're doing all that stuff, you may end up seeing your precinct results in the 9 o'clock hour. It could happen. Now, that's not a promise. That's not a guarantee. If there are people still in line, it's going to stretch that out because remember, if you're in line at 8 o'clock, the polls don't close at 8 o'clock. The line closes at 8 o'clock. So if you're in line, you stay in line and you'll get to vote. So anyway, after all those tabulations are made, there's a new thing this year, which is that votes will be coming in, mail-in votes, absentee votes will be coming in after Tuesday, after Election Day. And each day those ballots are received, in that case, at a central location at the elections office. And you will see updated totals every day. So the totals that you see reported via the Secretary of State or the city's website are not the final totals. Often they are, at least the final unofficial totals. This year, there's going to be 7 days in which votes are going to be coming in. And so we'll just have to see. There's a court decision that impacts those votes. And then really important to say is that the official final total doesn't come until after the canvass. And this is something, again, at the elections office where all the votes are audited, all the tapes are checked. There's a canvassing board. It's very official that makes sure that it certifies an official number. So any number that you see before that is an unofficial count. Gotcha.
So let's talk a little bit about absentee. Let's talk about absentee ballots. So when an absentee ballot comes in, why is it that it takes a little longer for those to be counted? Why do we need an extra 7 days to be able to count all those ballots?
So the reason basically is that with the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, the assumption was that more people would be voting by mail because they wouldn't want to go congregate publicly and risk getting COVID. And those ballots would be flooding in. And frankly, if somebody casts a vote by election day. If it's postmarked by election day, it should be counted. We shouldn't just cut it off at 8 p.m. It's crazy. So through a court decision and an agreement with the Secretary of State, they had this additional 7-day counting period. Now, this is new. This is unusual. It's actually in dispute. Those ballots are going to be, they're not going to be physically segregated, but they will be made note of, and courts will be ruling later on whether those votes are allowed to count. That's complex, and we can get more into it. So my strong message to anybody who mailed a vote in and is not sure that it's arrived is go to your polling place tomorrow, no matter what. Election officials like Rahma can check and see whether your mail ballot has been received. If it hasn't, then you can actually cast a ballot, and we will spoil the mail ballot if it ever arrives. We have a number for you, a unique number, a voter number. That's something that Rahma will see in the electronic poll book. She's working with an iPad there. And we'll know not to let you vote twice, but we want to make sure that you vote once. So if in doubt, go to the polling places tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. And let's reinforce that. So Rahma, because of COVID-19, as David was alluding to, there has been, a large amount of absentee ballots that have come in. Most people have voted from home already. We have a record amount of Minnesota voters that have already voted absentee. So what safety measures have been put in place at the polling locations due to COVID-19? Why should people feel completely safe going into the polls?
Okay, so everyone's required to wear a mask now. So don't come to the polling places without a mask. If you don't, it's really required. We really want to keep our poll workers safe and our voters safe. We also have this thing where you have a 2-table distance between you and the poll worker, just to keep us safe, and just to, if someone were to come in with COVID, just to have that 6 feet distance. And yeah, we've been spacing out stuff differently this year. With our last election in August, we had we originally had people leave out through one door, but at my polling station, we have people entering through one door, leaving through other door, just to have it be able to move smoothly, which is really nice. I think you're muted.
It happens.
You gotta love technology, right?
Right.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Rahma. Everyone, please feel safe and comfortable going to the polls. As Rahma mentioned, there have been, safety precautions put in place to make sure that we all can do this safely. I can attest to that. I just voted today. It was a longer process than in previous years, but it was definitely safe and secure. And so I do want to reiterate that. Anything else you want to add to that, David, about the safety measures that are being taken this year?
Yeah. One thing I really want to encourage people to think about is that most of the people, 3/4 of the people, I think, in Hennepin County where we live have already voted by mail. Their votes have been counted. And so I think when you go to the polling places, we have I think it's 136 precincts in Minneapolis now. That's a lot of precincts. We haven't cut those back because of COVID. A few have moved, so you should check. But there are going to be a full complement of election judges. They all people did it, right? They got on it. So I think you're going to see no lines to very short lines in Minneapolis. If you really want to be sure, my advice would be don't go at any time when people are going or coming home from work. But usually morning is the only time you'll ever see. I mean, before 9 a.m., maybe even before 8 a.m. because the polls open at 7. So it's my belief tomorrow that what you're going to see is large open spaces with all of the precautions that Rahma mentioned, but not a lot of crush of people. Today, if you were very online, you might have seen some long lines at the early voting center, but I really want to emphasize there were four early voting centers today for everybody who wanted to vote. Tomorrow, there's 136 voting centers, and they will be ready for you. They will be eager to have you. You will not be overtaxed. So there'll be plenty of spacing, not a crush of people, good ventilation. Usually these are in buildings that have very high ceilings, so you're not all cramped into a little space. So it's cool. Wear your mask. give your social distance. Everybody's cool with that. Judges are going to be helping with that. If you have any questions, hit up the greeter judge that Rahma mentioned. That's one of the jobs that I did. And they're there to help you just when you walk in the door. Like if you have questions, believe me, greeter judges are extroverts and they want to help you. Okay. Trust me on this. So I think everybody's going to be fine. We've done this once in the COVID era during the primary, and it went off without a hitch. Gotcha.
Thank you so much for that. I guess that is a really good point about the fact that there were 4 early voting locations today. So of course, those are going to be overpopulated. Absolutely. So that's a really great point. So remember, everyone, there are going to be a lot more, election day polling places open. And so the lines will be hopefully shorter. If not, stay in line, though, because you will, although the polls close at a certain time, doesn't mean that if you are there by that time, you will still be able to vote if you are in line. We have a question in the chat box. We have a question about the few documents that you had mentioned, Rahma. What few documents were you referring to that you need on election day?
So if you're trying to register same day, Minnesota has this really cool thing where if you're not registered in the state, you can come on election day to your polling station and register if you have a few documents. I actually have this really tiny dandy paper with all the list of documents I have to memorize. And if you have an ID with your current name and address, that counts. That's all you need. If you have a photo ID with an old address, you'd have to bring some supporting documents, some of which is a bill with a start date 30 days from the election. It can be a phone or TV or internet bill, a sewer, electric, gas, water bill, bank or credit card statement, or your rent or mortgage lease. And if you have a student fee statement, that also works. You just need to bring at least one of those documents to be able to register the same day. You also have
sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to also emphasize, because I see this a lot, that you can bring electronic versions of the address documents. So you don't have to print out a bill. I've had it happen where people show up and they're well-meaning, but they don't realize they're maybe not registered, or they moved and they didn't re-register. And then it becomes panic, right? But if you have an ID, like Rahma said, and you can pull up your lease, your trash bill, anything online. So I guess you got to make sure that you can, remember your password so you can call those bills up. Your cable bill, your internet bill, anything that shows an address, it can be electronic, as can your lease.
Yeah. I just wanted to include that if you know someone in your precinct that knows where you live, you can also get them to vouch for you. And if you guys can go together and vote, they can just vouch for you. And yeah, it's pretty simple that way.
And then also, everyone, if you are dropping off someone else's ballot, what I have been seeing at least my polling location today, you don't have to stand in that long line. You can go right up to the front and say, hey, I just want to drop off my ballot. So keep that in mind. That's what I experienced today. David,
I'm not 100% sure. In fact, I'm pretty sure that you can't drop off somebody else's ballot tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, no. Right. Not tomorrow. Not
today. Today you can be an agent for somebody, because that was early voting. Tomorrow, you got to show up, but you can vote from the curb. Maybe Rahma can explain that. We can accommodate you a million different ways if you don't want to go into the building, but it has to be you tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, correction, election day, it does have to be you. So been in a early voting mode. But yes. So do you want to talk about curbside voting?
Yeah. About that a little bit. We have this cool thing with COVID. We actually had it even before COVID, but people didn't really take advantage of it. So the registration thing is actually on an iPad, so it's portable. We can take it to you. We actually take people from 2 different political parties, so it's unbiased and nonpartisan, of course. So we take it out to you. You fill out. We get you registered. You sign off the voter acknowledgement, and we bring the ballot to you. And we help everyone. We help you cast the ballot from your car or from your bike or anything.
Awesome. That's very, very convenient.
I want to add one other thing, which is I was just saying you can't vote. I can't bring somebody else's vote to the polling place. That's true for the precincts, and it gets a little confusing. So just follow me here. Until 3 p.m. tomorrow, you can go to an early vote center, not the place where usually it's not the place where you vote, but like the Hennepin County Government Center, the Minneapolis Elections Office at 980 East Hennepin, Longfellow Park, and the Urban League on the north side. Until 3 p.m., you can bring somebody else's ballot, somebody that you know, to those places so they don't have to go out and vote, but only until 3.
Yeah, let me just emphasize, do not bring your ballot, your absentee ballot, to your polling place. We're going to have to reject you. But if you actually go to your polling place, you'll still be able to vote either way. But yeah.
Right.
So you're saying if someone brings in their absentee ballot, then you cannot receive that, but they can still vote that day.
Yep. At your polling place.
Yep.
At your polling location.
Yep.
Yes.
Gotcha. So please remember that you all make sure you're taking these little nuggets and these little and making some notes for tomorrow if you haven't already voted. I know many have, but if you haven't already voted, you're getting this information out to your family and friends. And those that are watching right now, feel free to share this live so that other people can get this information as well. All right.
And just one more time, if you have a mail ballot, bring it to an early vote center before 3. If you don't have a mail ballot, come to your polling place between 7 and 8 and leave your mail ballot at home or trash it.
Awesome. So what would be your advice for folks who are going to be patiently waiting for results on election night? They want to know the final results. And we understand that right now, as we discussed previously, we're going to be counting ballots. We have absentee ballots that we have to still count. We still have we have thousands and thousands of ballots, absentee ballots that we need to count after November 3rd. So what are we saying to folks? How can we put people at ease? What can we let them know so that they're not stressed out and having anxiety about what the results are going to be? What's some advice that you would give them?
Oh, you're muted now, Rahma.
There we go.
Thank you. I would advise voters to just take a deep breath and breathe in, breathe out, stay calm, be patient. Give us election judges and election officials some time to count every single ballot, because Minnesota voter outreach, voter turnout was amazing. It was fantastic, honestly. But with coronavirus, it's really difficult to get all those ballots counted, and you might have results on election day. You might not. You might have it a week later. We're not really sure with that. Just be patient. It takes time. It takes time.
Yeah. Now, if I can be a little more colorful than that, I've got 2 kids. They're grown now, and when they were in diapers, we always used to worry about when are they ever going to get out of diapers, right? Because it feels like forever if you have kids. And somebody, a more experienced parent than me, said, "You don't see too many teenagers wearing diapers. It'll come. That moment will come." And that's the same thing I want to say about the election results tomorrow, coming up. They're going to come. They'll come before anybody is inaugurated. They might not come soon enough for your anxiety tomorrow night. So you know what? Dial down your expectations. It's cool. You want to know, we all want this to be over. My God, we all want it to be over, right? But we also have to do democracy right. And in Minnesota, I can promise you, you are going to see updated totals starting tomorrow all the way through. And if it's close and there has to be a recount, I've lived through that in Minnesota. It will happen publicly. You'll be able to watch it on camera. This state, if you're going to live somewhere in America when you're having election anxiety, this is probably the best state to live in. Now, it's not that stuff can't happen, but we are here. Our whole system is based on allowing people to vote and letting people watch the system while we do it. So just dial down your expectations. Maybe you'll get lucky and it'll come fast. It'll be a landslide for your candidate of choice. But if not, within, I would say, a week, maybe sooner, maybe a little bit later, you'll have a pretty good idea who won.
So David, you were just talking about, just watching and being patient. I know that there are polls where our polling locations where individuals are able to go and actually watch the ballot counting process. What is that process like? How can people do that? Is that still going on? Can that still happen on election night for people to come and watch ballots being counted? Is that still possible?
I'm not sure about that. I know that in the case of the precincts, the 136 we were talking about, you can't stay around after the after we close that. We don't let voters just hang around. Now we do have potentially we have challengers. They have to be official, have an official letter from their political parties who can observe. That's cool. Downtown after the vote count, again, I'm not sure about that. I know that during the recount, though, we've had a couple of recounts. That is public. That happens in a public place. You can watch people turn the ballots over. But right now, basically, what's been going on for several months is volunteers or judges down at the elections office, I have to change my nomenclature, have been processing these ballots. And so what that means is, they come in the mail, they come to the elections office, they all have your name on the front because you filled it out right? And your ballot's inside of a security envelope that's in that. So what we do, the first cut we make is we take those envelopes and we basically sort them into these gigantic mail trays. And they go in the precinct that's listed on, the thing. And we're entering that information into our system so that when Rahma, for example, gets somebody trying to vote at her precinct, if the absentee ballot folks at the city's elections office have already recorded your ballot, it came in a month ago and we recorded it as in a month ago, she'll see something over your name that says AB in red. At least I think it still says AB. And that's her cue to say, hey, you've already voted. Congratulations, your vote's been received. Your vote's probably been run through the tabulator because you can do that anytime 2 weeks before the election until election day. And we keep track of comings and goings. And I should also mention that if your vote was received, which is something that you can check, that you can just be assured that it's going to be counted. So you don't have to worry about it. It's fine. You can call your city elections office if you're concerned. Tomorrow might be a little bit busy, but if you go to vote.minneapolis.mn.gov, you can find more information.
Absolutely. So what David is speaking about is a ballot tracker. And so the ballot tracker can be found on the Secretary of State's website as well, MN Votes. If you want to go there, you can find the ballot tracker and see if your ballot has been tracked or your ballot has been counted already. So that is definitely a very, very, very handy tool just to put your mind at ease. We don't want folks stressed out. We don't need that. So put your mind at ease and track your ballot.
Yeah, and I would strongly encourage anybody who hasn't checked it yet to go to mnvotes.org. You need to put in either your driver's license number or the last four of your social. It kind of depends. You should try both if you have any static. But it will tell you if your vote's been received. If your vote hasn't been received, if it doesn't say anything, it may still have been received. The systems aren't perfect. But if you have any doubt, go to the polling place tomorrow or drop off a mail ballot if you haven't mailed it before 3 at the early vote center.
Gotcha. Last question, I would say for you, Rahma, that I have, you're 17 years old, and I think that, as I mentioned before, that's absolutely amazing that you are so civically engaged at this time. I wasn't even thinking about this at 17 years old, honestly. And so what would you say to first-time voters? Because like you said, you wish you could vote this election, but you're like, hey, I can't vote this election. So this is what I'm going to do. What would you say to those young voters that, aren't super convinced that they want to vote this election? What would you say to them?
I would just say to them, if they're thinking about this election, there's so many different elections. So like there's the Senate election, there's so many different types. There's the presidential in it. There's local elections that really matter. That those local elections are actually the thing that affects you on the daily basis. And not voting, I wouldn't, since this is a nonpartisan place, I wouldn't say I won't force you to vote, but voting is like one of the best things you could do in the state. I'm sorry, I'm completely stuttering, but it's really important. That's sorry.
No, you're good. Absolutely. Yeah, what you stated is so real. Like the local elections are just as important as the federal election, just as a presidential election. As you stated, that is those elections, those individuals that we have in those spaces that we elect, they directly impact our lives, right away. And it could be literally a week or two from some money being, allocated to whatever that could be streamed down through your city council that affects you just like that. As if it was on the federal level, it may take a little bit more time for things to trickle down to our very communities. So exactly what you stated, that's why we should care. And that's what I hear you saying. And so I appreciate you stating that.
Yeah.
For you, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, a lot of people say my vote doesn't really matter. It's just one person. But if everyone has that mentality that my vote is one vote, it doesn't really matter. Imagine how much that would add up. Like thousands of people say my vote doesn't matter. I'm just one person. But then it's like, this is thousands of people. This might be millions of people saying that their vote doesn't matter when in reality, those votes actually impact the election.
Absolutely. Yeah. David, what about you?
Well, I was just going to say on that point, we had a U.S. Senate election, one of 100 people in Washington that get to decide who a Supreme Court justice is, decided by 312 votes in this state, in Minnesota. So you never know, right? And the other thing I would say is think about what happens in your life every day, from whether you can travel around because of COVID. Are politicians equal on their COVID prevention policies? I don't think they are. You probably want to vote for one that's better. Do you ever have to deal with a teacher? There's school board elections on here, or maybe your kids have to deal with a teacher. Do you have to deal with a cop? Hey, I'm here to tell you, Washington decides sometimes whether there's federal cops in here or how much money is flowing to the city. There are city people who decide whether we're going to have defunding or not. All those issues. There's not a thing, probably a day in your life, that you don't come into contact with the consequences of a political decision. So if you want everybody else to make that political decision for you, okay, but you'd probably like to have a say, because you never know how close it's going to be. And you feel terrible, by the way, if you don't vote and then it turns out something does matter. Like, you don't want to be wrong about that. This doesn't take long. It's kind of cool. It makes you feel good. It keeps Rahma employed, and it's all good,
Absolutely. So if someone wants to, they want to volunteer to be a poll worker, is it too late to volunteer?
I'm pretty sure it's too late for this election. I know with Minneapolis, at least, there's been so many applicants there. I think they have over 1,000 people who couldn't get a position, sadly, this year. But I think in those suburban cities, like up north and stuff, there might be a possibility of them, and they might be in need of workers. So if you live in one of those cities, reach out to your people. See if they don't need it, then it's okay. But if they do, that's a really good opportunity to learn more about our election system.
And just ask somebody, at one of the election judges at your polling place tomorrow. It's important to know that, at least again in Minneapolis, there's going to be an election next year, primarily city election in 2021. We're going to have an election for governor and all of the legislature in 2022. We're going to have another city election in 2023. We're going to vote for a president in 2024. So look, we're always looking for people. And, frankly, with more mail ballots, which I think is going to be a thing that just happens and stays around, we're actually going to need more judges. And I should also mention, by the way, that people thank me for being a volunteer when I'm election judging. Baby, I'm getting paid, okay? I'm making more than the minimum wage because Minneapolis is cool about that, all right? So I'm taking home a little scratch for my 16-hour days. So that's available to you. I think Rahma might have to not be paid because of the... No,
I'm paid.
All right on. That's good. I'm just making sure. So it's real, right? There's a real opportunity for you here to both help the public and help yourself, frankly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So I think we're going to go ahead and end this. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I think before we leave, I'm going to give you the floor by yourself to just go ahead and say your final words, and also share with Minnesotans just this why we should feel safe this election. There's so many just fear mongering and things that's going on in the political climate around us. Why should folks feel safe to vote here? And just your final words. And let's start with Rahma.
Okay. So I just want to talk to people and say this election is one of the most important elections of my entire life, and I'm unable to vote. So with you guys going out and voting for my rights, for other people's rights, and for the stuff you believe in, it's so important. And I just want to say, go out and vote, make your decisions, do your research, choose which candidate fits your beliefs, and just go vote. It doesn't really matter which candidate you're leaning more towards. It just matters that you're participating in this democratic process that's really secure. And yeah, just go out and vote tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you, Rahma. I appreciate you so much for being here. Next up, we're gonna have David come and give his final remarks.
Well, compared to you guys, I'm practically an ancestor now. But one of the things that I've learned is that the world is changing. And frankly, I think it's changing in a great direction, but it won't change fast enough unless people younger than me vote more. And, plenty of people my age vote, plenty of people my complexion vote. But we really need everybody to vote because the city's changed, the state's changed, and we need that reflected in our leaders. I also want to give a shout out to Prairie Rose, who mentioned if you want to volunteer, but maybe the election judge window is closed, that there's still election protection work, making sure that people can vote. She mentions the Native American Rights Fund. If you Google election protection and Minnesota, you'll find plenty of places to protect the vote. But I just can't thank you enough for the opportunity. I can't thank Take Action and everybody else for doing the work of organizing communities that are heard from less in our politics. And that can change just by showing up. If you believe it's a first step, it's not the last step. Voting isn't the only thing that makes change. People make change, but voting helps. So that's my pitch.
Awesome. Thanks so much, David. Thank you, Rahma. This has been fabulous. Minnesotans, I hope that this was a helpful conversation for you as you are hitting the polls tomorrow all day. Do not stop. Don't get out of those lines. Stay there. I know that there are going to be folks bringing around food in a safe way, bringing around food and other things to make sure that you can sustain and wait in those lines to make sure that your voice is heard and your voice is counted, because it matters. It truly matters. And we are so grateful that we have amazing poll workers and election judges like these two amazing guests this evening that are committed to the process, and they're committed regardless of what the outcome is. They're committed to the democracy of our country, and specifically the safety here as well in the state of Minnesota, and staying true to that. So thank you. I'm going to give a round of applause to you two and all of the other poll workers that are out there that are their nights that are being spent there away from their families just to make sure that things are taken care of. So I think that is the final spiel for tonight. Thank you, everyone, once again. If you do have any outstanding questions after this live, after you viewed this live, please do contact us, Alliance for a Better Minnesota. We can direct you in the right to the right folks that can, if you're whatever you may be looking for, we can assist you in that way. But yes, this has been a pleasure. Everyone, go out and vote. And hopefully we can do another Facebook Live and maybe even discuss kind of after the dust has settled and just kind of seeing how this whole process went with this election season. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Have a fabulous night, David, Rahma, and have a good night, Minnesota.